Have you ever wondered how fancy bakeries make cupcakes look like roses? I'm not talking about rosettes, I'm talking about actual rose cupcakes. Well, I'm gonna show you how, and honestly, it's not that hard. The first thing you're gonna need is a piping bag fitted with a 104 piping tip. Now the awesome thing about the 104 piping tip is that it's the same number whether you get Wilton or Ateco and like probably any other brand. It's a teardrop shape, so zooming in here you can see that it is wider at the bottom and more narrow at the top. And then the frosting you want to use is a buttercream, something that is nice and stiff and hearty so that your cupcake doesn't look like all melty. Hold it in your dominant hand, really twisted right here. So you're going to hold your thumb and then the rest of your fingers kind of hold the bag. But the thumb is important because it holds the twist and you're going to hold it nice and tight. And this is what you're going to squeeze the frosting out of. I know usually we use 2 hands whenever we're piping cupcakes, but in this case, we are just going to use 1 hand on the piping bag. And the other hand is super important. It's gonna be on the cupcake itself. And the important job that it has is to spin the cupcake as you go. The first thing we're gonna do is pipe a cone in the center of the cupcake. And the cone is going to be about 1 centimeter on the base, and then it's gonna narrow in on top. And that's gonna make the center of your rose. And the way you do this is you hold your piping bag horizontal, about 1/2 centimeter away from the center, and then tilt it inward slightly. Now apply pressure on the piping bag as you twist your cupcake around. There we go. You see that nice cone? The next thing we'll do is start to pipe petals. So for the first row of petals, we're going to do 3 petals. And you know how we had our piping bag horizontal and then tilted slightly inward? We're gonna do that same thing, but tilt it inward just a little bit less. And then instead of piping in a cone shape, we're actually gonna pipe little rainbows all around it and make sure that we're gonna tuck around the edge of each petal each time. So I'll show you what that looks like. So go like this, slightly inward, and then we're going up and down for each of these petals and then tucking them around. It looks like that. Now you can see it is already starting to look a little bit like a flower. The next row, and for the next few rows, we're going to add 1 petal each time. So we did 3 this last time. Now we're going to add 1, so we'll do 4 petals around, and we'll have the piping bag pretty much up and down. So not really tilted inwards anymore. It's just gonna be held horizontal. But we'll continue to make those rainbow shapes. And this time we'll do 4 of them, really tucking the petals around each time. And after you do your row of petals, you can kind of go in and observe and say, you know, this one could have been tucked in a little bit more, and kind of shape them up. There we go. All right, so now we'll do 5 petals. Okay, and my cupcake is getting to the point where I think I could start rolling those petals out. If you're doing a wider cupcake, something wider than kind of your standard cupcake, you might want to do a few more rows with them straight up and down. I'm going to start to turn mine out, and what that looks like is instead of having your piping bag straight up and down horizontal, you'll tilt it out just slightly. So I'm kind of exaggerating it so you can see, but I'll do it here so you just, it's very subtle, the amount that it goes out. And that is gonna start having the flowers, petals, tilt outward. There we go, like so. And I might even be able to squeeze in another row of petals. So I'm gonna try and do that right here. And if your cupcakes are sitting really low in their cupcake wrapper, you might not be able to do this last row of petals, which is totally fine. It's also all about your preference. So that is the cupcake that we have just piped. A few more tips. So the frosting that you use, again, we want it to be a nice stiff buttercream frosting, but if while you're piping you notice that it starts to get a little bit runnier, or your cupcakes aren't staying nice and stiff anymore, then you can just pop your piping bag and the tip in the refrigerator or freezer for just a couple of minutes to let it stiffen up. The other thing when you're learning how to pipe roses, or really any new skill, is to give yourself a bit of grace. You know, it's something that's going to require a little bit more muscle memory than maybe just piping a rosette on top would. So definitely give it a whirl, try a few, and then maybe take a break. Let your arms rest. I know they can get a little bit tired from squeezing the piping bag, but give yourself a little break. Have some water, a cup of tea maybe, and then come right back at it with fresh eyes and give it a go again. So I am excited for you guys to make your rose cupcakes. I'd love to see them. If you want to tag us on social, we're bakeeatlovebox.com. If this video was helpful, like it and subscribe to Bake Eat Love for more baking tips and tricks. Happy baking!